That same night, the bell of the tower began to ring, and not far from the area there was a mansion. Victor entered the mansion and using the sword Beelzebub massacred all the men who were present, making the place fill with corpses and blood. He went out to the balcony and started observing the light of the moon. While his hand was releasing a demonic energy, he revealed that this was person number 29 that he had killed today. Everyone had died or their heads had exploded at the mention of the demon. He assumed these were the terms of the demon's contract. Victor took out his journal and began crossing off the names of the people he had just killed. In the end, no information could be obtained about the location of the 10 superior corpse demons. He expected a rather long and arduous fight. He did not expect there to be a harvest on the first day. For now, he decided it was better to return to the academy. He started jumping from rooftop to rooftop until some time later he reached the academy. Without making any noise, he jumped inside and landed on top of a branch. He started staring at the window and remained silently thinking. Inside the academy, the welcome party for new students was being held. Victor decided to get down from the branch, changed his clothes, jumped and landed on the ground, then began to stand up and dust off his clothes. He put on his glasses and decided to at least show his face in case something went wrong. Inside the academy, the welcome party was taking place, where there was a buffet and everyone was eating and happily enjoying themselves. At this party, the triplets were also present. They grabbed a pitcher of beer and started drinking like never before. Not long after, the president of the school dollars arrived and the students went crazy, saying that they loved her. At this party, students could also enjoy wine. While some were chatting with beautiful women, others volunteered to be waiters to serve wine. While the students were enjoying the party, Victor also decided to attend and entered the room. Victor began to observe the blonde-haired boy who was talking with women and the woman who was serving wine. He had never thought that those two would be in the same year. A great hero who led humanity to victory along with Camus Morgue during the era of destruction. Among them, he was always at the forefront and led the battlefield. He was a genius from Don Quixote, from the 7th generation family, and he was known as Spear of the Sun, called Tutor La Mancha Don Quixote. And the archer who brought down countless demons, a genius from Usher, from her 7th generation family. She was known as Divine Bow, called Bianca Po Usher. At this party, there were many other faces that Victor had seen on the battlefield. He closed his eyes and couldn't help but start smiling since he never thought he would meet them like this. He also remembered that Camus Morgue had also entered the academy. Not far from Victor, a student asked another who was trembling if he wanted to listen to some music. The student who was trembling was none other than Piggy. While holding a mug of beer, he became somewhat nervous. The other student put his hand on his shoulder and explained to him that he was supposed to do it when his senior told him, asking why he didn't just do it already. Upon hearing this, the girl who was behind them started screaming and announced that the freshmen were going to sing. A lot of people gathered around Piggy and he couldn't help but get a little nervous. Victor looked at the crowd and upon seeing Piggy, he was somewhat surprised. The poor Piggy began to cry since he didn't want to sing, and upon seeing this, the girl brought a giant jug of beer and asked him to stop crying. If he drank it all in one go, he wouldn't have to sing. Seeing how enormous the jug was, Piggy couldn't help but remain terrified and perplexed, and with a tear-filled look, he asked her how someone like him could drink all that. The student started smiling and with a terrifying look gave him the order to drink without complaining. Several seconds passed, and Piggy did nothing. Seeing this, they asked him if he wasn't going to obey his seniors. Upon hearing this, Piggy had no other choice. He grabbed the beer jug and without hesitating for a second, started drinking like crazy. While he was drinking, the students began to enjoy it and couldn't help but start laughing. Piggy was not used to drinking so much beer, so not long after, he started vomiting and everyone began laughing at him and nicknamed him Vomit Pig. Piggy, who was vomiting, couldn't help but start crying, and even though he wanted to do something about it, he couldn't stand up to his seniors. At that moment, a cloak began floating, and several seconds later, Victor appeared and placed his academy cloak over Piggy's vomit, leaving everyone in shock. They couldn't help but wonder who he was. Victor began to look at them with a calm gaze and remained silent. After vomiting, Piggy started panting heavily. Before Victor regressed, Piggy had dropped out of school because he couldn't endure the bullying, and had become a low-ranked government official who had led a hard life while taking care of his parents. Victor met Piggy again on the front line after the time of fall began. He was one of the few who volunteered to go to the front, and with his amazing strategy and information analysis, he saved multiple lives, including our Victor's. Piggy was a friend who deserved respect. He was somewhat confused when he saw Victor, and just before he could ask, Victor asked him to return to the dormitory first since he was going to take care of this. He couldn't stand by doing nothing while his friend was being humiliated. The student who was bullying Piggy put his hand on Victor's shoulder and asked what he was doing, and if perhaps he had gone crazy, and how dare he interrupt when a senior was speaking. Victor remained calm and did not respond, and seeing this, the student gave him a strong slap and realized that he was Piggy's classmate. Both belonged to Ice Core Class B according to him. Considering how he'd intervened, it seemed that Victor felt confident in himself. The triplets couldn't help but get furious. They couldn't believe that Trash had dared to touch the master. Victor's cheek turned red like a tomato. Using his hand, he adjusted his glasses and started staring intently at the triplets. Even though the triplets wanted to kill this bastard, they couldn't do it since they remembered that Victor was a commoner in the academy. He was going to kill them if they revealed his identity. While the student was harassing Victor and Piggy, the girl from before asked him not to be so hard on the freshmen since, as they're seniors, they should treat them well. She clasped her hands together and began to smile because in reality she had another plan in mind. She brought out another large jug of beer, placed it on the ground, and if Victor could drink all of it, they would let both of them go. Victor remained silent while on the other side Piggy was in shock. With a worried look, he asked Victor not to worry about him since he was fine. But just before he could finish his sentence, Victor grabbed the jug, stood up and without hesitating for a second started drinking it, leaving everyone shocked and speechless. The girl and the other student couldn't help but start laughing since it was a mixed drink with high alcohol content. It contained vodka and rum, so there was no way a human could drink more than a liter of this. But to everyone's surprise, Victor continued drinking as if nothing happened, slowly emptying the large beer mug, leaving them shocked. In the blink of an eye, Victor drank all the beer, placed the mug on the table and began wiping his mouth. After doing this, he took Piggy, who was feeling unwell, turned his back on the seniors and said goodbye to them. They remained silent, unable to understand what had just happened. The student who had been bullying Piggy put his hand on Victor's shoulder and asked him to wait a moment. At that moment, an intense and suffocating energy spread throughout the room, and even Tudor and Bianca were shocked upon feeling this energy. While Victor's eyes were shining, with a piercing gaze, he asked the student if he still needed something. Feeling Victor's gaze and energy, the student couldn't help but start trembling in fear, and removed his hand from Victor's shoulder. President Dollars approached upon hearing the commotion, and with a confused look, she asked why it was so chaotic here. Upon hearing her voice, the student couldn't help but become alert and think that this wasn't good. He and the others became somewhat nervous and with a forced smile explained to her that a first-year student had vomited, asking her not to worry as they would take care of it. Dollars approached them and started scolding them, saying that they couldn't treat the freshmen cruelly since they needed to maintain the academy's image. While Victor and Piggy were walking away, in a low voice, he thanked him. Seeing how cool Victor had been, the triplets couldn't help but feel excited and covered their mouths. Tudor and Bianca were somewhat confused as they didn't know if they had been mistaken in feeling the strange and suffocating energy. In the middle of them stood a woman with white hair, who couldn't help but be somewhat impressed and start to smile. She began to observe Victor and couldn't help but start blushing because she had found a good person. She was Sinclair, from the Ice Core class. She had obtained rank number 1 in the practical exam and rank 2 in the theoretical exam. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.